I got seas going right across my deck here now. I did not right up in his vicinity, but no, I didn't. So this is good too, Roger. Thanks for that information, sir, and I'll get back to you if we come up with anything. Over.
Hello, and welcome to another... Hey, everybody, is what I say.
Do we say different things?
We do. I think you usually say hello. There has been a previous episode where I did that, where I was mixing up the intro. Because when I type it, hello seems more appropriate, but that's never usually what I say.
I guess I didn't realize we do the introduction differently.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Breakers, a podcast about shipwrecks, loss, and lessons learned from maritime disasters. My name is Tanner. I am one of your hosts for today. I'll be joined shortly by Taylor. But before we get to that, we have recently been joined by some new patrons. So big thank you to David, Morgan, Dylan, and Matthew. We hope you enjoy what you find over there on Patreon. We just put out a bonus episode on... What did we put a bonus episode out on?
Death Ship.
The film Death Ship, which is not the film Ghost Ship. And we did an episode about desertion among Chinese sailors in the Battle of the Atlantic.
We really went to two extremes on our bonus episodes that month. Like, one is very academic and one isn't.
We have an upcoming bonus on... Well, let's just say we're going to get medieval on your asses on that episode in bonus. So thank you for supporting the show on Patreon. For those of you who have not heard yet, you can now sign up for a full year of bonus episodes up front, and you can save 20% compared to what you would pay month by month. So you can go check that out on Patreon. Get yourselves a little bit more of the show. And you've already heard his voice, but welcome, Taylor, also.
Hello.
Been a bit since we recorded.
It has been. Busy as always, right?
So trying to jump back into this. We started the new semester at school, so new set of students, more students than we've had recently, so that's kind of nice. But what else? What have you been up to since we last recorded?
What have I been doing? Well, I was supposed to go to a concert in Cleveland on Monday. Unfortunately, some logistical things happened and we couldn't go. I was going to go see Motion City Soundtrack and Say Anything.
Say Anything?
Yeah.
I forgot about them.
I was like, Motion City Soundtrack is one of Darcy's favorite bands. So
I know that Tell Me That You're Alright.
Yeah.
Song. That's the only song
they got some good songs. Like, I've gotten into them. But yeah, like Say Anything is something I listened to so much in high school. And I was really curious to see how that aged live. It's not something I listened to.
Called her on the phone, and she touched herself.
That feels like from a different time.
Really does.
So we had a couple things happen. We ended up not being able to go to that. So we ended up kind of just having a extended us weekend here at home. And it was kind of nice. One of the good things when you have a partner that you like being with is you just enjoy spending time together. So it was still fun despite it being a little bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, that makes things easier.
Yeah, that's my advice. Find someone you actually like. Easy as. Media-wise, things I actually have done, well, with some of that time at home, I used that to finish Stranger Things. I'd watched like the first 2 seasons of it as they came out way back in like 2016. And I kind of dropped it. It just wasn't... I'm not super into that kind of stuff anyway, but like, you know, it was in the zeitgeist, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then with it concluding, Darcy wanted to finish it. So I decided to restart it so we could finish it together. Mm-hmm. And it was good. I think it's a solid series. It's not like a top 10, not top 15 or anything like that for me by any stretch of the imagination. I think that it gets hurt by being stretched out over a decade for like 40 episodes. Like that's a long time to build a show. Like, and then I feel like ever since Game of Thrones, I feel like the ending of the show have become like tribal. And I feel like it's really easy to hate a show's ending. Like the easiest opinion you can have when a show ends is like, oh, that was shit.
The one iteration of the ending that you have seen and ever will exist. And it's not as good as some theoretical ending that could have been better.
And I feel like with Game of Thrones, since I binged it, I didn't have the years long build up to that point. And I think that's one of the things that keeps me from like absolutely hating it the way some people do. Where I could see if you invested all that time and energy into it and then that happens, you're like, wow.
I think it's interesting coming from the perspective of being a reader of the books before the HBO series came out. I would say to people who are upset by the show's ending, at least you have one.
Right?
So savor that at the very least, even if it didn't go the way that you wanted it to go. Because the readers have been waiting 12, 13, 14 years. I guess that was 2010 that Dance with Dragons came out, 2011.
That's wild. So yeah, like 15 years.
I bought that the day it came out, and I remember thinking, yep, just a little bit more time till the next one.
It's kind of like everybody waiting on GTA 6. Like one day this will happen.
Oh yeah, I was going to say Stranger Things. Katie and I watched I think we watched through the first 2 seasons, and I think it was...
That's exactly where
I think it was the 3rd season where we just kind of lost interest. Is that the one where they introduced like the Soviets and stuff into it?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
It was a good change of pace for us coming off of Succession.
I think also the show could have possibly benefited from wrapping things up in a more concise manner before everyone found out like what a Zionist freak Brett Gelman is. And whatever the main kid's name is, he'd throw him in there too. I think if they had gotten it out of the way before anyone knew anything about that, they maybe would have been a little bit more well received.
The other thing I've been up to, I just finished the book Last Stand at Quezon by Greg Jones. It's a pretty quick read. No real like politics in the book. Like it's pretty much on the ground, gritty detail kind of thing. Basically, what I learned is that it had all the worst parts of World War I trench warfare, but with tons of fun new surprises. How deep some of these guys dug trenches, and like if you had free time, you dug things like that. Like it is so reminiscent of World War I, except in theory, like the North Koreans can drop bombs on you and stuff too.
The North Vietnamese,
North Vietnamese.
I guess the North Koreans like wouldn't have opposed the idea of doing it.
Yeah, it was just something that I saw pop up and kind of on a whim read, and nothing like new or earth shattering by any means, but just it's so interesting to read firsthand accounts of truly how awful war is.
Have you read Kill Anything That Moves?
No, I have not.
I just got that from the library. I haven't started it yet, but that one's also supposed to be pretty... I think the premise of it is essentially that while, My Lai and some of the other covered massacres are the ones that, were reported on, kind of highlighting how, in a sense, routine that kind of thing was. It's just that most of the time it was more successfully covered up.
That's one of the things I read. The previous book before this I read was about the whole Market Garden campaign. And like, I am shocked at how casual in all of these reports is. But we had 10 German prisoners, but we were paratroopers and can't take them with us, so we shot them. Mm-hmm. And like that was just like a thing that happened. No one was trying to hide anything in these. So like it is interesting, the sanitized view of war that we so often get. Which I guess is why it's important to read books like this.
For mine, my most noteworthy one recently was I finally watched the movie The Battle at Lake Changjin.
Okay. I think you texted me about this one.
I posted about it. It was a very cool movie. I think it came out in 2024. Oh no, 2021. And it was very good. I really enjoyed watching it. I could not find a Chinese audio version of it anywhere. Every place that I was able to find it, it was the English dub.
That sucks. I'd much rather get that subtitled.
Which gives it some ridiculousness at times.
Does every American talk like they're from Texas?
Kind of, and even some of those are dubbed. It's like it's white actors, but they're clearly not speaking their lines in English. That sounds like a dream job. I would love to play Americans in North Korean movies. That would be the coolest job. It's a relatively small acting pool, I would think.
You just become the American guy and everything. You're their Tom Hanks.
Like the guy from the Korean War who became a movie star.
Actually, you'd be their Chris Pratt. That's what they want. They just want a vanilla, boring, bland Chris Pratt.
He's like the Chris Pratt of the DPRK, if that makes sense.
That sounds like something from 30 Rock.
But no, that would be cool. I would love to be a star actor in the DPRK.
Life goals.
So I guess I should explain. This is a Chinese film that is about the Korean War. It's about the battle that Americans would refer to as the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. It's the same battle. And it's really interesting to watch like a, capital W war movie from another country, particularly one where the Americans are the enemy.
Yeah, like where it's their Black Hawk Down.
It's way more successful than Black Hawk Down in terms of the actual action being depicted. And in some ways you can see kind of there is a different set or subset of values being sort of promoted by this movie compared to what you might see in an American war movie. And some of it's not subtle, but on the other hand, it is still very much a war movie. All of the same type ridiculousness happens. It's so cool. There's a scene where some of the Chinese soldiers shoot down an American corsair with a bazooka. It's the coolest. If you want to see a lot of American soldiers get roasted, great movie to watch.
So it's like literally the opposite of like our war movies where
a lot of Chinese soldiers die in it too, obviously.
But like that's always for like emotional effect. Where it's like you see like movies in like the Pacific, it's just like mowing down hordes of Japanese a lot of the times.
Exactly that.
It's just that, but reversed.
So if you need some catharsis, worth checking out. And it's 3 hours of it.
Wow. So
it is like one of those old war movies.
It is interesting to see like another country's take on that. Because like it's so easy to think that, it looks weird when someone else does it, right? But like it's harder to see it when you watch a movie where America is the good guy.
It's also kind of interesting watching it because some of the same things that like an American World War II film might be criticized for. For example, Americans kind of thinking, well, we waltzed in and won the war and not really paying attention to our allies, the British, the French, let alone the Soviet Union.
Right.
And kind of in this movie, it's kind of funny because it is a Korean War movie. The DPRK troops are barely mentioned. You would almost not
China.
know that it's the Korean War.
Interesting.
There's barely any mention of what this war even is. The Americans are really funny. The American voices are pretty funny. The dialogue is pretty stilted at times with the dub. There's some sort of anachronistic type stuff where near the end, I remember there's, it's like a big Chinese like artillery bombardment. And the American soldiers are yelling stuff like, take cover, bro.
It's like if AI could power like a simulation of being there.
There was some very fun stuff about that. The sub thread with Mao's son, Mao Anying, who was killed in the Korean War. That's a cool thread because he was killed around that time as well. Let's see, I'll skip my other one because we have some stuff to get to. We are getting into the main sequence of our episode here today. This episode takes us somewhere that we have not been on a main episode yet.
But somewhere we were just talking about.
Despite its massive presence in global shipping today, and that is the People's Republic of China. I've been in a very Chinese phase of my life right now. So in this episode, we need to talk about a type of vessel we don't actually talk about that much, despite them being a huge part of the modern transportation world. That is the container ship.
Yeah.
Which we haven't really talked about.
We don't talk about it very much, no. I mean, like the Alfaro.
Aside from references from them getting stuck places, we don't really talk about container ships.
I mean, but it is between the tanker type vessels and this, if you go to a port, you're going to see container ships. It's what exists in the global trade at this point.
One of our main characters today is the COSCO Hong Kong. She is a UK flagged container ship measuring 280 meters in length, or about 919 feet, with a gross tonnage of 65,531. This is a pretty enormous vessel.
Yeah, that's big.
almost 1,000 feet. Exactly what you're thinking of when you think of a container ship, or at least what I was thinking of when I think of a container ship.
Yeah, definitely.
COSCO Hong Kong was registered to Coswin Shipping Limited and managed by COSCO Maritime Limited on a bareboat charter and classified under the American Bureau of Shipping.
It's a whole lot of different countries and classifications.
It is, and ultimately these things don't really affect the story that much, but it's a little bit of background for a company that you see all over the place in any picture of ships or ports in from modern day.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually know that much about the company.
It's interesting how these modern transport companies work with all the different registrations and managed by. It's kind of like how airlines work with the wet leasing and dry leasing and all that kind of stuff. There's so many financial things going on under the surface.
So COSCO Maritime is, if we talk about it again in the episode, will be referred to as COSMAR. So a bit more about COSMAR, reading here from the MAIB report that is the main source for this episode.
COSMAR is a wholly owned subsidiary of COSCO, and its office is in Barking, Essex. The company has managed its fleet of 7 vessels from build. In 2008, COSMAR's vessels, which had been leased, were purchased by COSCO. The vessels were then transferred from either the Hong Kong or Bahamas shipping register.
Those other 6 vessels referred to here are COSCO Antwerp, Hamburg, Shanghai, Singapore, Felixstowe, and Rotterdam.
One of these things is not like the other one.
I'm sure Felixstowe is plenty important, but compared to those, it's these are some of the big heavy hitters in ports, ever. And then little Felixstowe. At the time of today's story, COSCO Hong Kong ran a 6-week cycle as part of a liner service between the Mediterranean and the Far East. A bit more about the company COSCO, not to be confused with the bulk grocery emporium Costco.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be tricky.
Maybe more Americans are familiar with.
I feel like Costco, the shipper, you see it so much if you're around a rail yard or a port or anything, you almost don't even notice it. But
it's every container or every vessel has it that you can see in this picture, so you don't really even notice it. I don't know what price their hot dogs are.
It's not $1.50 with a drink. I don't want it.
So COSCO was created in 1961 and operates multiple subsidiaries with a range of shipping options. This sounds like we're reading an advertisement for COSCO.
It really does.
On the pod. COSCO Shanghai is for container ships. COSCO Dalian is for oil and liquid petroleum gas tankers. Bulk Carrier Company Limited is for your bulk carriers, operating out of Tianjin. Tianjin being the big... It's close to Beijing. I guess it would be disrespectful to call it the port of Beijing, but it sort of is. It's a massive city in its own right, though.
Like a Milwaukee to a Chicago, kind of?
Sort of. I mean, it forms sort of like a uber mega metropolis with Beijing. I guess there is already a word for that. Guangzhou is for specialist or multi-purpose vessels. I think heavy lift vessels are part of what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Qingdao is for dry bulk carriers, and there's also Xiamen for various other types of vessels. So they have a lot of these little subsidiaries. COSCO crews are recruited and trained in China, and the company has its own maritime college in Qingdao, which I thought was interesting.
That is interesting.
Like a feeder academy, I guess, just for the company.
I mean, I guess since we don't have a national carrier like that, I mean, we have the Merchant Marine Academy.
Right. Yeah, I guess this is a similar thing. The report notes that in recent years at the time of writing, COSCO had struggled to fill its positions and retain crews. I think probably not the only shipping company going through that.
Not the easiest job to recruit for, really, I wouldn't imagine.
So enough about COSCO and COSCO Hong Kong for now. We will shift over to our other main character today. This is the Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135. That's my best approximation. I don't know what tones I'm supposed to be using on these words. I don't know what any of them mean. I know that zhe with a falling tone is the Chinese word for this, like the demonstrative this, but I don't know that that is what this is in the name. She was a steel-hulled fish transportation vessel, 39 meters in length, so about 128 feet, with a gross tonnage of 182. So we're talking like a tenth of the size?
Yeah. Pretty small, like relatively speaking.
And so she herself was not a fishing vessel. I don't even know if she ever was outfitted to do that. Her role in the fleet was to transport the catch from fishing boats themselves into port so that the fishing boats can stay out and fish and their catch can be taken into port without them having to leave the fishing grounds.
Sort of like a different take on the factory ships we've talked about. Whereas instead of bringing the factory out to the catch, like you bring the catch into the factory quicker.
Yeah, pretty much. Just another sort of way to sort of centralize the fishing and I assume, expedite the process. Your fishermen can fish and your transport people can transport. She was owned by her captain, Sheng Guowin, and Captain Sheng held a Chinese Class 3 Open Sea Captain certificate. His second in command on board was Chief Officer Mao Su-kun, who held a Class 3 Open Sea Chief Officer certificate.
That seems like they're qualified then, I'm assuming.
She sailed out of Xitang in Zhejiang Province. Zhejiang is in eastern China. Well, naturally, I guess if we're talking about boats. Its capital and largest city being Hangzhou. This is close to Shanghai. This is like southwest of Shanghai.
Yeah, I was just looking it up.
Shanghai is like its own thing. I don't think it's part of a larger province. I think it's like a directly administered municipality.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was just reading some of this background stuff, obviously China has a very long history. We know that. But it is crazy to see like a modern regional capital that was founded in like the 220s BC.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy.
It's like for an American where like our capital cities were founded in the 1840s.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135 had a crew of 11. In accordance with Chinese regulations, she was outfitted with 2 hydrostatic release life rafts. Those will come back later. Or will they? I guess that's really the problem. She had a Class B automatic identification system, or AIS, as we'll call it going forward. There is a note about this from the reports.
Vessels fitted with Class B AIS mainly send fixed-length messages using time slots not used by vessels fitted with Class A AIS. This can affect the intervals at which vessel information is transmitted, particularly in areas where there is a high density of AIS-fitted vessels within radio range.
When that term comes up, I was thinking of Peter Boyle in Everybody Loves Raymond saying, "You AIS'd her?"
He fought in the Korean War.
Peter Boyle?
No, the character on Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh.
Pretty sure that's like canon within the Raymond universe.
She was not equipped with an EPIRB, nor was she required to have one. The EPIRB. I guess we should talk. We haven't mentioned EPIRBs in a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
An EPIRB is an emergency position indicating radio beacon. I think in earlier episodes, they came up quite frequently. Just this little thing that activates. Was it activated when it hits the water, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Or if it comes off of its position where it's...
Yeah, and then it emits like a radio signal so you can actually be tracked.
So she does not have one of those if something were to happen to her. So moving into the incident. In the early morning hours of March 6th, 2011, COSCO Hong Kong was sailing on a bearing of 30 degrees, that's north-northeast, en route from Hong Kong to Shanghai. So they're off the coast of Zhejiang Province at this point. Hong Kong sailed with a crew of 23, and the officer on watch, or OOW in the report, was the second mate at this point.
What is the report that you pulled this information from?
This is an MAIB report.
Okay. I was just curious if it was a Chinese report that had been translated, or...
There are portions of it at the end, so that the some of the onboard regulations and the things like that, those are included as an appendix to the report in the original Chinese, but they're also translated. I don't know. I assume there is some sort of full government report that was done in Chinese. So the second, I think I said second mate. He's referred to as the second officer.
Okay.
He had taken over the watch just before midnight. This was the midnight to, I think, 4 o'clock. And he was relieving the third officer. The second officer was accompanied on the bridge watch by one able seaman, who was designated as the lookout.
So there's just 2 people on the bridge?
For now. Hong Kong's captain was very experienced. He was 54. He'd been an employee of COSCO for more than 30 years, 20 of those serving as a ship's master. He had taken over Hong Kong in November of 2010, and so he was relatively new to this ship, but he had commanded 4 of her sister vessels. And I think they're all basically carbon copies.
Okay, so yeah, very experienced with this type and size of vessel.
Yes, so no issues there. He presumably knows what he's doing with this type of ship. That is just an amount of responsibility that is insane to think about. Like, you're in charge of this thing, and just like the millions of dollars, not just that the ship itself is worth, but like all the stuff you're carrying. That is an insane amount of responsibility to have at work.
And like, if something goes wrong, like, you're the person everyone looks at.
Like, if I tell my students a wrong thing, like, it might cause an awkward situation for them, or they'll like lose points on a test or something. There's only so much damage I can cause at work. You could get one of these things stuck in the Suez Canal.
You could. That would be horrible if that happened.
Yeah, then you'd be late for your delivery, and you've stopped the entire global trade network. I can't do that at my job teaching. Teaching English suffixes so wrong that it causes a geopolitical issue. So another important figure here is, of course, the second officer, who has the watch during the critical moments that are coming up here. The second officer was 26 years old, having joined COSCO as a cadet in 2007, so 4 years prior to the incident. He got his third officer's papers a year after that, and in 2010 he had qualified for second officer, serving in his role first on the container ship Tianjin He. He had no incidents on his record and no concerns noted in his reviews. Everything seems to have been perfectly adequate when he takes the position on board Hong Kong in November 2010, which is the same time that the master took over. So I assume they were sort of brought on.
Seems like overall, like, the crew is pretty well qualified and experienced.
We'll see kind of in the analysis section, they do kind of look at what some of those qualifications are. So the second officer, this is one of those sort of very bad luck situations. He was actually scheduled to leave the vessel upon arrival in Shanghai on March 7th. So he was very shortly not even going to be on this ship anymore.
I imagine there's a lot of switching and changing, like, as is needed for the company and stuff.
Especially if everything is presumably as standardized across the board, but like ship to ship, it's probably very easy to move people. According to the report, on the morning of March 6th, quote, the visibility was good, the sea state was moderate, and the wind was from the north-northwest, force 5. Here's where it gets interesting. You remember how many people are on the bridge watch?
Just 2, I think.
About 2 hours into the watch, so this is just before 2 a.m., the second officer granted the able seaman permission to leave the bridge to conduct a fire patrol. That was standard practice on board. During this fire patrol, the able seaman would also cook noodles in the ship's galley.
So this was more about taking like a noodle break than looking for fires, probably?
Kind of, and it appears that this was also standard practice, at least on this ship. This was not something that he was doing, without the second officer's knowledge. This seems like it had been an expectation of, when you're the watchman, this is also what you do. You make the coffee, make the tea, you put on some noodles, whatever. All this stuff that's going to require you to be down in the galley.
I mean, it's probably one of those things where I'm sure like it benefits the second officer too, because if he's stuck at the helm, like I could go for a cup of noodles right now at 2 a.m,
If you think about it, it's like as you're doing your rounds and whatnot, what is a minute to go put on some water for tea or coffee or whatever.
Especially if you've done it 100 times and nothing bad's ever happened.
And like literally the officer on watch told you to do it.
Yeah.
So at this point, heavy rain had set in, significantly reducing visibility.
But if that was going on, I'd be like, hey, maybe we can skip noodles today.
Call someone else to make noodles.
Bring in a reliever.
So again, now it's still the middle of the night. Now it's raining. And now you only have one set of eyes on the bridge. And that set of eyes is also steering. In the minutes just before 2 a.m., the second officer made gradual adjustments to the ship's heading in order to avoid a group of fishing vessels about 5 nautical miles distant. Around 2:05, the second officer was hailed over VHF radio by the officer on watch from SITC Pyeongtaek. Pyeongtaek, this is a Hong Kong flagged feeder ship. So I didn't know that this type of ship existed. I get it logically makes sense that it does. It's a medium capacity container ship, about 530 feet long. They do like shorter runs between closer ports, so you don't have to load up, this massive container ship.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially like why different sized airliners exist.
Right. Yeah, she's sort of like a regional aircraft here. Pyeongtaek's officer on watch was concerned that the vessels were going to come a little bit too close for comfort, just about 3 cables distance. This is about 0.3 nautical miles, or about 2,000 feet.
That doesn't seem like that much of a distance for 2 ships that are of this size.
But at the same time, when both of those ships are moving, and they're potentially, on an interception course, I guess that distance probably disappears rapidly. Oh, as a note here, all of these upcoming things, Mandarin is the language of communication that's being used in all
I was
going to
ask that. I didn't know if it was like in aviation, like English is the standard, like internationally.
I believe everyone here is using Mandarin in all of these exchanges. Actually, there was a note. I probably forgot to add it to our notes, but in the report, it did note that the DP, the designated person ashore for this vessel, and presumably other vessels too, was actually, I believe it said someone that did not speak Mandarin.
Oh,
and so had to do all of that stuff through translation, which is an interesting complication to that.
Yeah, do you have to have a translator with you at all times? If you're,
I guess you'd think that if you needed to call this person, you would want them to be able to communicate in Mandarin, like the company language. I don't know. There was no response to this message from COSCO Hong Kong, and so Pyeongtaek altered course to increase the distance of their closest point of approach. This is going to be the first of several instances where there's just a message that does not get answered.
Yeah, if I'm the Pyeongtaek, I'm like, asshole. Like, what are you doing?
Be careful with that thing.
Yeah.
And throughout this is the time when the second officer is the only person on the bridge. So he's making these little adjustments at the helm. He's also theoretically on watch. He's trying to, be the lookout. And so he's neglecting some of these things. He's not able to answer and respond to these messages if he's hearing them at all or noticing them at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When you're that occupied, you may not even hear it if you're so focused on the other things you're doing.
Elements of this kind of remind me of Torrey Canyon, in that it is kind of a disaster in slow motion, like many of these tend to be. And much like that, you have an instance where the officer in command is trying to do everything on the bridge, which, like we saw there, is going to cause a problem. About 15 minutes after this first course change to avoid those fishing vessels, the second officer changed course again to avoid another stationary group of fishing vessels. And so now he's traveling at 48 degrees in a northeasterly direction. At this time, another vessel was identified traveling east just behind the closest group of fishing ships. The second officer was not checking the AIS receiver or radar, and so he didn't know the identity of that crossing vessel. Spoiler, it is the Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135, as would later be established. So with that course adjustment, COSCO Hong Kong was now east of her originally planned track. And now things start to get even more complicated. Not just for us, but for the second officer.
I do feel like talking about collisions, it does always get so complicated. I have to go back and check notes so many times. You're constantly, they made this turn, and then this one made this turn.
Like this one, I actually had to pay attention to the coordinates and the true coordinates versus the relative coordinates. Sometimes you read one of these reports and the numbers actually matter. So about 2:15, COSCO Hong Kong was passing about half a nautical mile ahead of Pyeongtaek, as she also passed the group of fishing vessels on her port side. The officer on watch noted that the crossing vessel was now within 2 nautical miles. Here we get one of several moments of uncertainty that might ultimately contribute to what happened. Report says, quote, "The officer on watch sounded one blast, lasting approximately 3 seconds on the ship's forward whistle, but Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135 maintained her course and speed." So that's a moment that we'll come back to.
Mm-hmm.
There's some interesting details in that relatively short section there. The officer on watch, the second officer, his next decision was another consequential one. He planned a turn from their 048 degrees to 330 degrees. This is a nearly 80-degree port turn that would now have her facing northwest. So he's been making these kind of little ticky-tack adjustments, and now he makes this major, almost a 90-degree turn he's making here. In theory, the second officer sort of was killing 3 birds with 1 stone here. So by making this radical turn to port, this would hopefully put the crossing vessel firmly to his starboard side and avoid a collision. It would keep COSCO Hong Kong clear of the fishing vessels ahead of her. And it would return her to her originally intended sailing track. Remember, she had gotten a bit too far east.
Yeah, so that his choice makes sense.
Kind of. Unless any of our listeners are very up on their collision regulations. Quoting here from the report.
The second officer checked the S-band radar display sighted on the starboard side of the bridge to confirm that the intended heading of about 330 degrees was clear of the other vessels. He then moved to the port bridge wing and looked over the port bow and the port beam to ensure that it was safe to alter course. The OOW then returned to the centerline console and began to adjust the vessel's heading to port using the joystick control on the vessel's track pilot system.
At 2:15, COSCO Hong Kong began her port turn. Over the next minute, Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135 also made a course alteration to starboard.
Oh, that's not good.
So if you're picturing this in your head, you might see a problem developing. At the same time, the officer on watch moved to the port side to verify that the turn was taking him into clear water.
It's a lot of movement for someone who's supposed to be at the helm of the ship.
Yeah, you kind of see why you might want an extra set of hands, set of eyes.
And especially in weather, I feel like it's not uncommon to have another person or two up there to help you.
There's a lot of factors they get into in the investigation. A lot of stuff going on here. 3 minutes after beginning the port turn,
COSCO Hong Kong's OOW felt a sudden and unusual vibration from the forward part of the vessel. The OOW was unaware of what caused the vibration, and they quickly put the engine telegraph to stop. The vibration was also felt by the chief officer, who was awake in his cabin 2 decks below the bridge. He immediately telephoned the OOW and asked what had happened. The OOW replied that the ship might have collided with another vessel.
No, you might have collided with another vessel. I don't know why the ship did that.
Might is doing so much work.
I guess that goes back, though, to the size difference we were talking about. Is a container ship like this, fully loaded, when it hits something, it has to be something really big to really even register that you've hit something. It has to be like a bridge in Baltimore or something. The Suez Canal. So the second officer called the vessel's master, who was asleep in his cabin. He was, not on duty at the time. And asked him to come to the bridge after informing him of a possible collision. Not the way you want to wake up from your sleep if you're the captain of the vessel. Back to the idea of I can't fathom having that much responsibility at work. I certainly can't imagine delegating that to someone else. Because I need to sleep. I need to rest or something. That just seems crazy to be like, okay, you are going to drive this for 4 hours, but still if something happens, it's going to be my fault probably.
So let me know.
So at this point, the second officer also called the able sea person in the mess galley back to the bridge. And so I wasn't sure here, is that just because he now needed another set of eyes, or was he trying to get him back to the bridge before the captain got there? Like, did the captain know? I mean, I assume he did. I assume he knew what was going on in his own vessel, but I do think it's kind of funny if, like, that was why he had to call him back. Like, get out here. Like, captain's on his way.
I mean, but I guess you never know. If you do the same watch with the same person every day, you know, like you start to get comfortable and you do probably start having little things where it's like, hey, go take you a 10-minute break, you know?
I think it was mentioned in the report that I don't think the captain actually stood bridge watches when they were out at sea.
Okay.
I mean, it is possible he might not have known what the night shift was getting up to. Like any job, the night shift always over the day shift, and vice versa.
Yeah, I've worked both sides of it.
So the able sea person was still in the mess galley, finishing the noodles, I assume.
Can you imagine, like, they come up to the galley and they're like,
he's got noodles like hanging out of his mouth.
Your noodles extra spicy tonight. And he's like, what? What?
I got your noodles. What?
Is that a ship in front of us? Did you hit that?
Well, I guess none of them can see that anything has happened at this point. This is not like Torrey Canyon where you'd walk out on deck and see you hit the Scilly Isles. It's described in the report as like a standard or the usual routine for them to do that. So again, maybe this would not have been a surprise to the captain. He's probably regretting it now if it is something he knew about.
Everyone get your story straight right now.
So the deck lights were switched on, but a visual sweep of the sides of COSCO Hong Kong by the second officer did not reveal any evidence of a collision. The captain arrived on the bridge around 2:20. So this is about 2 minutes after the officer on watch felt the vibration, which is pretty good for, I think, waking up from a dead sleep and getting back to work. When the captain arrived on the bridge, the vessel was on a bearing of 300 degrees and in the process of reducing speed, which was down to 9 knots within the next few minutes. She typically had a cruising speed of 21 knots. The master, he had one general question, what happened? And 2 more specific questions for the second officer. Why were the deck lights on? And he also wanted to know, why was the cargo ship so close astern? He's referring to the Pyong Tek. And what have you been doing up here? In the words of the report, quote, the second officer did not answer the master's questions. Instead, he went to the starboard bridge wing to monitor SITC Pyong Tek's passing astern. So I don't know what this looked like, but it seems like that he just straight up ignored a question like to his face and walked away.
It's like the kind of thing where you're still going to do your job till they like drag you away to try to like not talk about it.
I mean, like I've been like that, at work where you're feeling frustrated and you have like a million things to do. And so you're kind of just tuning things out. But I don't know that I've seen that before in a report like this, where you just have like an officer ignoring the master. So that completed, he returned and he answered the master's questions when they were asked a second time. The master's concerns were either a collision or a grounding, and he instructed the second officer to log the ship's position and verified that there were no known navigational hazards in the area. So they're not out in the middle of the ocean. They're fairly close to the coast. So theoretically not out of the question that you could have gotten off course and hit, a stationary something, a rock.
Yeah, I'm sure there's all kinds of reefs and islets and things.
Yeah, so like those are the 2 main concerns, as you would expect. Other members of the crew are instructed to check the ship for damage, but none was found on the upper deck, ballast tanks, or the engine room. The Global Maritime Distress and Safety System and the AIS were checked for messages or distress signals, and none were found. So at this point, no real reason to, or rather no proof that they have hit anything.
Yeah, I mean, if you've checked the whole ship, I suppose, right?
At 2:40, so about 20 minutes after arriving on the bridge, the master began broadcasting a series of safety messages via VHF radio. These notified others of COSCO Hong Kong's position and that she was currently drifting. Vessels were requested to keep clear and to contact COSCO Hong Kong as needed. With these safety messages going out, the officer on watch from Pyong Tek recalled that he had seen the lights of a vessel ahead of him before Hong Kong crossed his bow, but had not seen the lights after the crossing was complete. The report describes the developing scene further.
SITC Pyeongtaek's OOW called COSCO Hong Kong via VHF radio and asked why there had been no response to his earlier call, why COSCO Hong Kong had twice crossed ahead of his vessel, and why the container ship's whistle had been sounded. COSCO Hong Kong's master replied that he was sorry and embarrassed. Pyeongtaek's OOW then asked if COSCO Hong Kong had collided with a fishing vessel. No response was heard.
So now it's the captain's turn to just start ignoring questions.
Looks like everybody can ignore questions.
And so, like, Pyeongtaek's OOW is a very valuable witness to this because he's a third party on a different ship. He did see both vessels before the collision happened.
I'm just picturing the master look at the second mate, being like, "What did you do?
I leave you up here for 2 hours." Also important to note there, he did clearly note that Hong Kong had blown her whistle, and he wanted to know why, because it was unclear what she was doing by blowing her whistle. The message was not necessarily received by the ships in the area.
Right.
Which we'll talk about more. The master of COSCO Hong Kong waited until 3:25 a.m. without receiving any distress calls or calls of any kind, aside from that quote that we just read. In that also, I think another little thing that's different that I've never really seen in one of these reports is the master replying that he's sorry and embarrassed.
Is that a little cultural type thing?
I would assume that's what that's from. Maybe more of a standard operating procedure in that situation, where if there's a possibility you've done something, maybe you're expected to do that. Like, I don't know that I've seen something like that noted in another report that I've read. I thought that was an interesting detail.
That is.
Like when, like in the Korean baseball league, when pitchers, when they hit somebody on accident, they bow and apologize.
Do they?
I mean, sometimes. Maybe not to everybody.
I kind of like that, though. It's better than here, where it's like you have to like pretend like you're upset and charge them out.
Yeah.
And like throw fake punches at each other.
COSCO Hong Kong continued her passage at this point, having drifted about 2.5 nautical miles since the possible collision. COSCO Hong Kong arrived in port at Yangshan at about 4:45 in the afternoon on March 6th. So that's later, the same day of the incident.
I think it's always so weird when you see these incidences and like, they checked, they didn't see anything, they carried on. Like they just arrive in port and have no idea that like something bad has even happened.
Certainly like the crew. I mean, they might not know anything about this at this point. Whereas like if you're the second officer, you're probably still feeling it in your bones. Like, I felt something.
And if you're the captain, you're probably thinking like, that's weird. That was a weird morning.
During the rest of the trip into Yangshan, the master asked the second officer to describe the events of that morning again. The second officer described how the other vessel had approached from the port side, but didn't take any evasive action when the Hong Kong's horn was sounded, or the whistle was sounded. The second officer maintained that he did not believe anything out of the ordinary had happened during the turn. So far, like, the evidence would point to that being true. I mean, there's nothing to positively prove that any bad thing happened. Aside from the second officer feeling the vibration.
And then you probably even have that thing where they'll be like, did I even really feel that? Did I like fall asleep for a second? Like,
I believe there was at least corroboration from, it was like I think the chief engineer or someone who was
in felt something
in the machine area. And he said, I felt something. A few hours after COSCO Hong Kong was back in port, the Maritime Rescue Coordination Center in Taizhou received a call from the Wenling Ocean and Fisheries Bureau. One of the ships from the fishing fleet was missing. It was Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135. This was about 18 hours after her last location transmission. So something that comes up in the analysis portion is that's a long time for a ship to be missing without anyone knowing about it.
Yeah, that really is.
Ships still in the area were enlisted in a search. There were 29 vessels in total, along with a fixed-wing aircraft and a helicopter. The MRCC reviewed the AIS information for the missing vessel and saw that her last transmitted position had been received at 2:18. This last position was, quote, very close to COSCO Hong Kong's position at that same time. Early the following morning, COSCO Hong Kong's master was instructed by the PRC's Maritime Safety Administration to save the information from his vessel's data recorder to save the information from his vessel's data recorder for the relevant time period.
Ooh, you mean those records I just got rid of? Wow.
Sort of, yes. That's not what happens. Not long after this, the vessel was inspected visually, I assume during daylight hours. Her bulbous bow showed, quote, paint damage and paint marks.
All signs are pointing to this coming together here.
I assume that means that her own paint was damaged and she had paint from another vessel.
Yeah.
So now they're pretty sure that something has happened. So they're looking for this vessel now. The search for the fishing vessel didn't yield any results, and the search was officially called off at 6 p.m. on March 10th. Using a side-scan multi-beam sonar, the Department of Hydrography... Hydrography, I guess.
Hydrography, yeah.
Geography, biography, hydrography. They undertook a seabed search for Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135. Her hull was identified on the seabed about 30 meters north of her last transmitted position in an area roughly 61 meters or about 200 feet deep. Given her location, basically right under her last position, the lack of a distress call, and the lack of any evidence she was afloat after the collision, all signs point to she sank almost immediately at the point of collision, and this is at a time when most crew would have been asleep in their quarters. This is 2:18 in the morning.
Imagine like the split second, like you're waking up and just getting sucked into a black hole, basically. Like you have no chance. And then to top that off, there's a 1,000-foot vessel passing over you when you're in the water that you've just woken up into. Like you don't have a chance.
Yeah, this is one where truly, like, it does seem like there are criticisms of the safety practices on board in terms of, like survivability. But at the same time, this is a situation where at this point, it doesn't seem like anything would have saved the people on this ship if the collision happens.
Yeah, like you can have all the safety features you want, but at a certain point of time, like the collision is the collision.
I mean, this is like hitting one of those Tonka Big Jakes that I used to have with like
with
your
a
SUV.
Real dump truck.
yeah, with a real dump truck. And if that doesn't kill you, the Big Jake battery will explode and finish the job. Shout out to anyone else who had a Big Jake when they were a kid.
I used to like to start it and go down the driveway and then jam the brake in and like drift.
Fast and the Furious Westchester Drift. Westchester, Ohio Drift.
Barbie cars and Tonka trucks.
So getting into the analysis portion of this, in terms of electronic data on the SVDR, which is the simplified VDR, what was available was limited to the vessel's heading, log speed, speed over ground, coordinates over ground. Is that what COG is? Course over the ground. I like that the MAIB reports have a very handy glossary of abbreviations and acronyms at the beginning.
That is nice, actually.
So heading, log speed, speed over ground, course over ground, and her AIS info. Missing from that, you might notice, is her bridge audio and her radar information from the time of the collision.
Oh, no.
That had been overwritten by the time the decision to save them was made. Because if you remember, he's not instructed to save that data until they're already in port. I don't know how much it saved at a time before it started rolling over it. But obviously, that's a pretty common thing with any of these data recorders. You have a finite amount of space. You can't save everything.
Right. It just doesn't look good.
So this is another one where there's no bridge audio. We don't have a rut-row moment here, as happened famously with El Faro.
Literally the thing that inspired me to make this podcast.
Many of the report's critiques come down on COSCO Hong Kong. Obviously, they're the ones who are still around to face some of these, criticisms and do something with them. But Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135 is also criticized for failing to give way as she should have in accordance with the Colregs Rule 15, which reads,
when two power-driven vessels are crossing so as to involve risk of collision, the vessel which has the other on her own starboard side shall keep out of the way and shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, avoid crossing ahead of the other vessel.
So, of course, these rules are in place to give you, a rule of thumb to work from in these situations, just like driving a car.
It's like why everyone knows what a stop sign means. Like what, so you know what to expect. I saw someone post something on Reddit today about driving, and it said, "Don't be nice, be predictable," and that is like the best piece of driving advice I could ever give someone.
Yeah, I kind of drive with the assumption, like thinking of what is the craziest thing the person in front of me could do.
Yeah, I'm always
especially here where we have a lot of roundabouts. And so a lot of people don't realize, you can't turn left from every lane in the roundabout. Things like that. Given this situation, COSCO Hong Kong's second officer logically assumed that the other vessel would give way. That if they're all working from the same set of rules, that should happen. And when it doesn't, that's when he sounds the ship's whistle. Another part of those regulations calls for at least 5 short blasts of the whistle in a situation like this where a vessel is in doubt as to whether sufficient avoiding actions being taken. If you don't think that the other vessel has gotten your prompt, your message, what do you do next? And here it's calling for 5 short blasts on the whistle. Do you remember what the second officer did?
He did one long one, correct?
Kind of. It was one 3-second blast, which in the report points out, one blast here could have very easily been misinterpreted by the fishing vessel as one short blast, an indication that Hong Kong is altering her course to starboard rather than port. That's how this could easily have been heard if they noted that the whistle was going.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in that case, it might make more sense what the fishing vessel is doing if she thinks that Hong Kong is turning the opposite direction from where she actually is.
Well, I think we see this so many times in these collision stories. It's what's the one story where the people doing the review, Empress of Ireland, where they're like, well, I don't even know why we're here. If everything everyone is saying is true, then these vessels never collided.
Nothing ever happened.
So I think it's always interesting when you read these stories that, like everyone thinks they're doing the right thing.
We had one. It was that the Hudson River one, the Empire of Troy, where we had kind of a similar issue where you had those sort of de facto river rules of like right of way and how to communicate those. And some captains were using that and some captains were using the kind of nationally approved set of rules. And when those come up against each other, you have a collision. If you're playing a game with 2 different sets of rules, there's going to be conflict.
That's what I say when we lose in basketball in the Olympics. Those are the fake rules.
So there is another reason, actually, that Zhe Ling Yu Yun might not have expected a turn to port from COSCO Hong Kong. And this is from Rule 17 of those coal regs. Essentially, in a crossing situation, what this rule says basically is, in a crossing situation, don't make a port turn to avoid a vessel on your port side. This could have been the second officer's attempt to get back to their original course. I mean, that's still in violation of this regulation. It doesn't matter why you're doing it.
Right.
So really no vessel in the area would have had any reason to expect that turn from the container ship in that situation. There is a major criticism of how the bridge watch was handled at the time of the collision, some of which I think we've already identified. Despite having 2 men on bridge watch, only one was actually on the bridge. And as we said, he's responsible for the helm. He's checking all of the messages, all of the systems, in addition to being the lookout. If you're the helmsman, you're not a great lookout, especially on a ship the size of this one. From the report again.
In this case, although the release of the lookout during the midnight to 0400 bridge watch was contrary to the vessel's onboard instructions, it had become a routine practice. In allowing the lookout to leave the bridge at a critical time when the vessel was on a night passage through dense shipping in adverse weather conditions, the second officer appears not to have appreciated the value of the lookout or the dangers developing ahead.
Really, the case here being, you can maybe bend the rules sometimes in a low leverage situation.
Sure.
But here, it's like getting into this, there's quite a lot of activity going on here with all these fishing fleets.
Bad weather. Yeah, like you're not in the middle of the ocean in calm seas.
Yeah, there's several sort of stacking factors that would say, okay, in this situation, you really should not send away half of the eyes on the bridge.
I think this is like one of the reasons why you see things like the whole like sterile cockpit idea in aviation being enforced and held to a pretty high standard. Because same thing, right? Like it gets easy if you get comfortable, start cutting corners, and something like this happens.
And I guess it makes more sense that you'd have the kind of intrinsic motivation, something like an airplane where everything is happening a lot faster.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's like, it probably feels like, oh, well, if something were to happen, we have time to fix it. It does kind of seem absurd that some of these huge vessels, as long as they take to maneuver, can still, collide with things or each other.
Or a canal.
With that extra set of eyes, even if, let's say, the collision still happens, the extra set of eyes on the bridge could, I don't know, maybe prompt an earlier emergency alert if someone at least notices that it happens. And there's a complicating factor I had never really thought about with container ships. The shadow zone in front of the vessel due to the height of the cargo.
Yeah, it's like a big F-250 like lifted truck, right? Like you can't see the kindergartner in front of you.
This isn't thought to be a specific contributing factor here. For the Hong Kong, there was a shadow zone of 567 meters ahead, when a vessel like Zhe Ling Yu Yun would not have been visible from the bridge. Even if you're looking directly ahead for it, you're not going to see it because you're seeing containers.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that the people that are maneuvering this vessel can't see like directly in front of them.
And the report notes that while the stack was higher than the recommended like safe height compared to like what sort of shadow zone is it giving you, it basically says that it's a difference of something like 6 seconds. If it had been stacked to, the limit, quote unquote.
And I guess the thing there is like you get into, even if you're not preventing the collision, you might have been aware of it and been able to call for help.
Right. Like that's the other thing is like there would be no downside to having an extra person on the bridge, the person who's supposed to be on the bridge in this particular time and situation. So had the second officer been looking ahead for it, Zhe Ling Yu Yun would not have been visible in the 50-ish seconds before the collision. There's also criticism in the report of the failure to reduce speed due to traffic and conditions, and the overall choice of route through this particular area. The master of COSCO Hong Kong was criticized for failing to go through all of the possible processes to ensure that no collision had occurred. So no, he's not there when it happens, but he's there shortly after. They do wait around a bit. They don't hear any distress calls. I don't know that they proactively call anyone.
Yeah, like I don't know how that works. Do you like report like, hey, something might have happened?
Yeah, I don't know, because I know in some of these instances where, it's been a fishing vessel that's maybe been collided with, the ship will maybe send out a call to other vessels in the area saying, hey, are you guys missing anybody? And that's usually how they find out that, oh, something has happened. The report raised additional questions related to fishing vessel safety. And one of these was, why hadn't the vessel's hydrostatic release lifeboats floated to the surface? Possibly a malfunction. It seems unlikely that they would both malfunction at the same time.
Right.
Unless they just weren't being maintained.
I mean, is it possible they were destroyed in the...
Well, that's the other thing, is that, like, this boat, presumably, I mean, it's taking massive damage immediately. It seems like it would be in the realm of possibility that they were just immediately destroyed in this collision.
It would be like asking, like, why didn't the airbags go off when a car, like, went off a cliff or something, right? Like, I don't think it would have helped.
So there's that. The report also countenances the possibility that they had been lashed down. This is something that happens in practice, though it isn't supposed to. It kind of defeats the purpose of the hydrostatic release. But it was done because, you know, those things cost money. If you lose one overboard in heavy weather, you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. You know, if you're a captain, you don't want to be incurring those extra expenses. Like any safety thing, if you find yourself lashing something down, you're probably doing something wrong. You probably shouldn't do it. Whether it's the release valve on your boiler, whether it's your hydrostatic release lifeboats. Same thing there, even without anyone in them. You know, let's say they release, but no one actually makes it off the boat. If those do float to the surface, that's at least something to mark where this is or tell someone that something has happened.
Right, like if someone finds your lifeboat floating, they're going to call that in.
And presumably that, you know, that could happen faster than it actually did.
Mm-hmm.
The report notes the impracticality of equipping the whole fleet with EPIRBs, but it does suggest that transport vessels like Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135 carry them, because they do often operate solo. They're going between these fishing areas. They're not staying with a big group of other fishing boats like the rest of the fleet is. So they do spend a lot of time on their own. And so it might make sense for, you know, these boats in the fleet should have these maybe.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense, like you said, since they're not part of a group.
And that's something that easily could have happened by this point. This report is from 2011, 2012. I did not check and see what actual changes were implemented after this. But that really is that is the story, basically. It's a story where obviously it's a tragic story, but it's also one where there are things to draw from both sides in terms of best practices and safety and redundancy when we talk about safety.
These are the kind of stories that I feel like are like case study type things in like a maritime academy situation of like why best practices exist, basically.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing, like many of these, something that we talked about a lot in I think the earlier seasons of the show, where we kind of did have a more laser focus on the concept of safety. But we talked a lot about how safety's never one thing and it's never an accident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to be very intentional about these guidelines, these safety guidelines. Every one of them has some incident that led to its creation.
Right.
That awareness of, and that was sort of raised in the part of the report where they talk about training, assessing, you know, in training, are these cadets being trained on practical situations where they know, okay, why do we need bare minimum 2 people on the bridge, you know, at nighttime in heavy traffic, in heavy weather? Do we actually understand the value? Are we doing that to check a box, you know, on the HR form that we're following all the regulations, or are we doing it because you need more than one person to steer and keep this, you know, 1,000-foot container ship safe? Lots of issues raised here. I had to learn a lot about the collision and collision avoidance regulations doing this one.
All of that stuff too, it all reads like it's written for lawyers by lawyers, so some of it's so confusing. You have to like sit there and really like visualize some of the scenarios and things.
And I think with all of that, it's, you know, the second officer is kind of the star of the show, unfortunately, in the report. A lot of it does directly come to him, but, you know, yeah, like that is, a ship is one of those things where the master has a lot of responsibility, even when he's not directly doing things, because you don't know how much of this happening on the ship is this the captain being lax about rules? Like we said, does the captain know that half of the bridge watch is not on the bridge for large portions
instead
of the midnight to 4 o'clock watch? Is that an issue of the captain not knowing enough, or is that an issue of the captain being too lax with his crew?
Was there any blowback for like the second officer and captain that you saw?
That I don't know. There's not a lot about this outside of the report. At least not a lot in English. Chinese is not one that's super accessible for me for stuff in the language. Not yet. That's what I'm saying. Not yet. So yeah, that is the tale of, well, 2 vessels. Zhe Ling Yu Yun 135. I guess we kind of just went on assumption of this. Yes, all 11 of her crew were killed. In the incident, there were no survivors. I don't know that their bodies were ever recovered. It's in about 200 feet of water.
It sounds like this, the information that we have access to is really purely about the collision and the immediate aftermath rather than any
it's something. I mean, this is kind of a classic example of like, these incidents happen way more often than I think the general public would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Where, a whole ship's crew is killed in one of these incidents. And this is the kind of story that it barely registers, globally in the news. There was that Spanish fishing trawler that sank just a few years ago,
mm-hmm.
which I'd like to do an episode on. But yeah, I mean, just goes to show like maritime accidents are not a thing of the past, as we've established on this show. But with that, I guess, unless we have any final thoughts, we can sign off here. Thank you for listening as always, and we will talk to you again soon.